Right, guys, I think we've given it a good 4 or 5 minutes now, so we should make a start. So let's welcome everyone to the first product social. So I'm just going to share my screen. So yeah, basically we're looking. My idea of the product social was to sort of create a bit of a different event to some of the other product events that are out there. The whole idea and the ethos behind it was to kind of address some of the real issues that face product people every day. This is based a lot around the feedback that I get from speaking to product people all the time, and ultimately provide a platform for people to share experiences and ultimately learn from each other. I guess share failures, because we all know we probably learn more from the things that we've got wrong than the things that we've got right, and ultimately create a bit of a safe space to encourage a bit of feedback from everyone, to I guess exchange ideas as well, because what might work for one idea for one organisation might work for another, and ultimately longer term I want this to be a social hub for product people. We're obviously based in Manchester, but we have offices in London, and I think the longer term aim is myself and my colleagues will take this as a bit of a national thing. I'll host the Manchester version, my colleagues will host the Midlands and one in our London office as well. Tonight's agenda for the first one, so we've done a bit of an introduction there. First speaker for tonight is Mark Walker from MPP Global. I don't want to take too much away from what he's going to talk about tonight. He'll give you a bit more of an overview, but his is ultimately around delivering product within a sales-driven organisation and challenges that he's faced with that. We then got George Wiltshire from Buybox, as Director of Product there, and he's going to talk about delivering product in different types of organisations, and again drawing upon his own experiences of doing that. We'll obviously throughout this I encourage people to ask questions throughout each talk. Please, I'll leave the chat open, add the questions in there, try and feed that back to both speakers, and at the end of it all hopefully have a bit of an exchange and a discussion of everything that's been discussed tonight, and then if anyone feels brave enough to sort of chip in with any confessionals of their own at the end of it based around tonight's topics, the floor is open. So yeah, very quickly about who we are. Obviously Oscar, we're a Manchester headquartered recruitment agency. I'm very keen to stress that I don't want this to be an entirely recruitment-led meetup that we're doing. We're in a very privileged position to be kind of overseeing the community, and it gives us an opportunity to bring people together, and that's very much the aim of the product social, ultimately to bring people together and kind of organise a community here. I'm Colin Fronchak, so I'm the guy that looks after product and recruits that in the north and the northwest for us. My colleague Jasmine looks after London and the south, and Randy looks after it in the Midlands. So that's everyone at Oscar. I'm going to hand over now to Mark Walker, our first speaker. Oh, very quickly before I do, I forgot that I've done my colleague a disservice. We also have another meetup for the developers called the Social Code. We've got a meetup in 2 weeks' time. So for any of you that would like to be involved in that, or have developer colleagues that would like to come along, please pass on the message. Right, Mark.
Hello. Oh, right. Let me share my screen. People probably spotted that live bird then over my right shoulder. Very nervous for tonight's game. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's fantastic to see so many people attend the first product social, and it is a privilege to be presenting to you all today. I've viewed the guest list, and there are so many people from different industries and backgrounds and experiences. So I hope I do this First, product social justice, give you something to think about based on my situation, my experiences, and I hope to learn from others who are experiencing or have experienced similar to me. So let's begin with a little agenda. So first of all, I'm going to start by introducing myself, give you an overview of MPP Global. I'll then go on to describe the sales drivers experienced by MPP Global product team and that impact on product development. I'll then go on to discuss how at MPP Global we align the product development in a sales-driven environment, and then finish off with how at MPP Global we maintain product vision whilst enabling short-term gains. So let's dive straight in. So currently head of product MPP Global, but my journey is a little bit different to most people who currently hold positions in product management. Parts of the journey you will recognize, but there's one part that's a little bit different, but it was a period that was influential on who I am today. So really, like many people, after regular education, I continued to higher education, and whilst at university, I held various accounts roles. But in year 3, whilst I was at Staffordshire University, a little bit of an opportunity came along, and I left to become a police officer, and that's the unusual bit. So I served in Salford in Greater Manchester for nearly 8 years, and I covered everything from the general beat to robbery and burglary squads. And some good periods of work, I became a Nightingale trained officer, and I investigated serious sexual offences. And about 4 years in, while still a full-time police officer, I actually returned back to the University of Manchester as a full-time student, holding full-time police officer job and full-time student, with the plan to use the skills and knowledge gained at Manchester to move into an IT-related position within the police. However, after completing my degree, things changed quite rapidly. Offered a position as a project manager at a company called Web Applications. And after that, my career path really changed significantly. But I took all them skills and knowledge, learned what I learned in the police, forward into future roles. I held many different project management positions at companies like Web Apps, Blue Leaf, Space 48, and even MPP Global themselves. But also as at MPP, I looked to make some changes based on some of the issues I experienced as a project manager and working with the product function at MPP Global. And it actually resulted in me moving away for a period of 3 months. I actually went to Barclays, Radbrook Hall, just outside of Knutsford, to pursue portfolio management, but something resonated with the senior managers. They saw the light. Anyway, I came back and I was asked to return to MPP Global to look at leading the product development and help shape the product function based on my suggestions. Within each period within my background, I learned many vital skills that I use today. Not listed them all, especially those in the police, but my time in accounting gave me a good eye for the value of money, how to keep a good hold on those purse strings. Within the police, I learned a lot. I had a lot of different experiences. I investigated some quite serious offences where capturing detail is key. Handled incidents where I was required to manage multiple individuals at any particular time or co-located, where accuracy and control was required. And I was put in situations where critical decisions had to be made in some testing circumstances. The time in project management allowed me to bring forward all those skills that I previously acquired in very different circumstances. I actually do wonder whether or not it's harder waiting for the outcome of a case, or in some cases, watching a ticking timer on an e-commerce website because you've got everybody in the world wanting to buy Charlotte Tilbury lipstick, very, very nervous go lives. And of course, my role in product gives me a lot of experiences, which I've listed here. And there's nothing like the experience of being involved in idea generation, design development, and delivery of a whole new product, and working with clients to achieve their objectives, whether it's revenue increase, churn reduction, and everything in the middle. And obviously working with a good product team as well. But specific to me, to my current role at MPP Global, I'm responsible for the product vision and its execution. That's everything from development to implementation, management, and the evolution of that product vision and the product strategy alongside my colleagues in product and with the CEO and CTO and other C-level executives and key stakeholders responsible for the product culture. to make sure that everybody understands the need for continuous innovation, and make sure everybody understands that great products are a result of true collaboration. And that's why I'm responsible for elements of collaboration, both client relations and internal, specifically related to go-to-market strategies by working with the sales and marketing department and other key stakeholders and divisions within MPP Global. As part of the team and responsible for the team, responsible for team development and developing a strong team and identifying and recruiting potential talent, and finally, metrics and reporting, the basic standards. So who are MPP Global? Well, MPP Global, software development company based in Warrington, various location offices globally. And what we have is our own SaaS product called eSuite. And eSuite is a subscriber management and billing platform. And what it does at a very, very high level, enable organizations to generate revenue of digital and physical assets, and handles everything from acquisition and conversion through to revenue optimization, churn management, and data and analytics that bring the first three together. It's broken down into 6 main high-level modules with multiple independent products or services within each module, and utilizes all various technologies, but mainly Microsoft and AWS technologies. As an organization, we're PCI DSS level 1 compliant as we process payments, SOC 1 and 2 compliant, ISO 2700 compliant, and we adhere to all GDPR and CCPAs and any other data regulations globally. And in total, there's 120 of us, and we remain an owner managed business. Now, the markets that we operate in are broadcast, OTT, pay-per-view, publishing, sport, and retail. And our clients range from Sky through to McClatchy in the US, that's a publisher, through NBC all the way to L'Equipe, and you may recognize some of these. And from a partner perspective, everything from Jump to Microsoft, Acedo, through to Delta Tray. And there are many more, and most would be classed as enterprise clients, with enterprise being defined based on revenue generating volume, user volume, or market presence. And competitors, that ranges from Stripe to Zuora, Salesforce to Piano. So brief introduction to me and MPP Global. But before I get straight into how at MPP Global we align product development in a sales-driven environment, I just want to describe the sales drivers that are experienced by the MPP product team that make us a sales-driven environment. So before I go into the sales drivers, to me, a sales driver is an influencing factor that can force a change to the planned product strategy or roadmap, and may or may not be in line with the product strategy or roadmap. And at MPP Global, we experience 3 categories of sales drivers. They come from project onboarding, where we're handling issues related to technical debt, whether that was known or not known at that particular time, missed requirements, great bugbear, newly discovered requirements, even bigger bugbear, as clients want to take advantage of more capability that they didn't have previously, and the general go live demands. Client requests is another, where these client requests might be region specific, as a client's wanting to operate in a market they didn't operate in previously. It might be user specific, technology specific, or even objective specific. Finally, drivers coming directly from the commercial team, and the commercial team being accountants, marketing, and sales. And those drivers are market driven, prospect driven, which is the main one we get, partner driven, or we've got the general hippo, which is whoever's gets paid the most money can decide whatever they want us to do. And we argue about it, and then we eventually do it anyway. So they're sales drivers because they originate from the process actions and the consequences of sales activities, and don't always originate from within the product team. In an ideal environment, product development would be isolated from sales drivers influencing the decisions and the direction of the product development roadmap. But from what I've seen, very few of those worlds exist, particularly with organizations like MPP Global, who compete against organizations with significantly more resource and have the finances to allow for product incubation and isolated R&D to occur separate from business as usual. And the sales drivers here, these are the ones that we experience, and we experience them because MPP Global is a sales-driven organization. There's a reason for it. In order for MPP Global to acquire enterprise clients and partners and compete against the competitors that I just showed, we have to provide a unique selling point that some of the large organizations struggle to deliver. And that is, we go the extra mile, which means in plain English, if you do it, if you ask, we will do it. To us, the sales drivers are challenges that must be navigated. They are forces that push us in different directions to where we want to go. They ask us to take shortcuts, and quite often than not, they do interrupt our best laid plans. And our approach, our product team's approach really is to embrace these sales drivers as they hit, evaluate that against a strategy, weed out the nice to haves, assess how we can deliver. We can try and fight those drivers and push back, but that normally would be at the risk of the client or the prospect. So at MPP Global, and in my experience, and everybody else has different experiences, how do we align product development within a sales-driven environment where such sales drivers exist? Well, first of all, we have a very specific product and delivery structure. What we did is we evaluated the historic demands due to sales drivers, and we created a revolving resource split of product first and client first. Product first resource are protected. They deliver strategic roadmap initiatives. And client first, they're more responsive to changing drivers. In order to make each resource split efficient, we implemented controlling committees that oversee the development approvals and ensure processes are running efficiently. Those committees are called the Product Investment Committee for Product First and the Product Approval Committee for Client First. And Product chairs both committees. Within Product First as well, there is, because there are larger initiatives, the committee does include the C-levels for approval because we're asking for more money. And within Client First, decision making is devolved to individuals who each have approval limits, with product having the final approval to ensure that there's continuous alignment. Product guiding principles. So these product guiding principles, they exist to ensure there is regulation when making decisions related to product development, even those coming from sales drivers. In total, we have 4 product guiding principles at MPP Global. The principles ensure that no development is progressed that is counterproductive to the platform, and the principles provide clear guidance as to what's acceptable. The biggest one really is we don't accept custom code. Product, we can't do that. And people tend to adhere to those principles. Product management framework. It's there to control the process, ensure quality gates. It's like product management framework and takes cues from processes described in the Alexis management of portfolios. The product management framework really ensures there's consistency and framework when evaluating all product development requests, whether they come from product first or client first. And the framework aims to ensure that the totality of the effort invested is aligned to achieving strategic objectives of the organization. We have a client success first approach. So the clients are the center of all decision making. All product development, client or product first, is evaluated to understand whether the delivery of the development will result in client success. This client success approach, it protects the USP and enforces quality by eliminating corner cutting. Product led doesn't mean that we're the center of the universe at MPP Global, but consideration is made to ensure that product development requests are for the greater good of the platform, and that the implementation of product should be approached with repeatability, automation, scalability, and in line with the technical strategy. We progress with empowerment within the organization. The committee structures were put in place to ensure decision making could be disseminated directly to those who are best placed to make the decisions. This allows sales drivers to progress while strategic product initiatives progressed at the same time. We take a best of breed approach. So again, in line with the guiding principles, a best of breed approach was adopted, meaning that the boundary of the platform was defined and that no longer would we try and attempt or think we could build everything. We always wanted, we always wanted to build it. We're a product company, we can build anything. But instead, we look to partner for non-core competencies, including platform capability extension and resourcing opportunities. And this approach, it reduces the pressures from the sales drivers through scope reduction and navigates MPP global delivery constraints. Go-to-market plan alignment. We reduce the impact of sales drivers by product being invited to contribute to sales go-to-market plans, and being involved, we can know in advance and or control those drivers if we can see them clear enough. And then finally, organizational alignment. The product team ensures that complete organizational alignment happens by consulting all departments when forming and delivering objectives, and ensures each department's requirements are understood where the product is impacted. So I've described there how the product team at MPP Global aligns with product development in a sales-driven environment and handles those sales drivers that I've described. But how do we maintain product vision whilst enabling short-term gains? So to maintain vision, we don't do anything special. We believe that many organizations globally do this. It's a well-trodden path. So we set quarterly objectives based on product vision and strategy and the upcoming roadmap, and we announce our intention to the business and clients. Essentially, we leverage the common objectives and key results framework. We define the key results that achieve the OKR. We proceed with proof of concepts to test the key results can be achieved and that they produce the correct results, and bail fast where they don't. We proceed with a period of rapid application development to create a production deployable minimum viable product, which is then used to capture data and client feedback. And should all go well, and if we're really confident, we might have already, or we then define a sustainable program of work to elevate the MVP to viable product, and where we truly believe there's value to be gained, we take it to world class over a longer period of time, which is sometimes, again, controlled by follow-on OKRs. And this approach for us, it focuses individuals on achieving high-value product strategic objectives, but rather than a prolonged period of development resulting in a big bang, we can deliver more frequently, achieve short-term gains, and evaluate progress as we go along. In addition, it allows us that flexibility to react to failing or miss key results or sales drivers. There's just one exception to this. Where an initiative or a deliverable is highlighted as impacting any security or clients' compliance requirements, we do tend to take a more reserved approach and go full waterfall. And this approach here operates on both product first and client first. So really, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you to Colin and Will for giving me the opportunity and speaking today at this product social. And it's been a seamless experience, and I look forward to attending more in the future and listening to some amazing individuals speak about their experiences in product management. Any questions?
Hi guys, please do use the chat function to throw any questions at Mark, and I'll relay them on if you've got any. I guess I'll throw one at you, Mark, to get us started. What stories have you got about hippos demanding making big demands on you then?
There's hippos everywhere, Colin, to be honest. I don't know if he's on, so I best not say it. One of my bosses is a hippo. No, he's some good challenges, you know. He just throws them out there, and you know, the big challenges like I want a new service and we want it really, really quickly. And by the way, I think it should be built like this. And that's fine. You know, that individual has been here a long, long time. His organization, he's seen it all. It could be, for example, the creation of a whole entitlement management service. And if you think within the subscriber management platform, entitlements, the gold nuggets, the entitlements define whether or not access to content is allowed from a customer, from a user, from a client's customer. So if we get that wrong, we either don't allow client users to get through and consume content, and that then cascades into many, many more problems where multiple actions start occurring, and that can start triggering various workflows, causing vast amounts of processing power required from the platform, and then the reputational impact. And if you think about it from a pay-per-view perspective, we got many clients that do some quite high-profile pay-per-view events. That's disastrous, especially at that last 5 minutes.
Okay, so Georgina Wilkinson has got a question for you. Are you handed problem statements or features for delivery? I often find that there is not enough space left for solution option exploration before we get into feature delivery.
Absolutely. That happens a lot. It can be really difficult sometimes to capture the requirements rather than the solution. That does come from the hippos mainly, but we do get that. And listen, I had it this week. I'm doing a presentation. Okay, yeah, great. I know we can leverage that capability. We can leverage that service. We can strip it down and it will do that. And we can leverage Redis. But really, what I want you to approve is how many transactions per second do you want this service to be able to handle? Do you want it to auto scale? Where do you want it to sit? Do you want it to be alive when eSuite is down? Give me your requirements, give me non-functional requirements. That's what I'm after. And tell me how to build it, because that may or may not look like what you're suggesting. And in fact, if you tell us exactly how to build it, it might not be what you need come delivery time.
Yeah, well, that's answered your question, Georgina. Shall we, any more questions for any more?
Okay.
No? Well, look, thank you very much, Mark, for
No problem.
First ever speaker. Hard act to follow, but I'd like to then open things up for our next speaker now. It's George Wiltshire. Over to you, George. Hoping George is still here.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, Colin, I was double muted. Yeah, I'm here, and then thank you, Mark. That was really great presentation, and I'm hoping there's going to be some interesting overlap with the things I'll be talking about as well. With just one. Can you see that, Colin?
Not at the moment, George. Yeah, just bear with me 1 second.
Okay, how about now? You got that?
Yeah, we've got that here. We're on.
Okay, fantastic. Right. Thanks for waiting, everyone. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about organizations and their relationship to product development. But before I start, I'll just have a quick introduction about myself. So I'm a computer scientist and software engineer by training. But over my career, I've been drawn more and more towards leadership and management, and more recently into product management. I've done a number of roles in a number of organizations over my career. In particular at Firebox, over the last 7 years, I've been there. I've been involved in a number of senior roles. And actually, I've stayed very close to the software engineering team during that time. Even now in the product management team, I'm very closely to that software engineering function. Mark's points about larger organizations and still being customer first and very responsive were really interesting points. And I think what I'm going to be going through today, we'll be talking about a little bit more about the journey of progressing from perhaps a startup culture or a company where you are developing your customer base and that sustainable, stable revenue, and transitioning into the next phase of your life as a business. So I'll also give a brief introduction to BuyBox. Chances are you've all indirectly used BuyBox's services without even knowing it. BuyBox has a distribution network of over 50,000 lockers around the UK, in which we deliver over 60,000 packages to every night, 365 days a year. Our customers are the likes of British Gas, Sky, Vodafone, npower, and many, many more. Basically, anyone who has a roaming workforce who require parts to do their jobs. We solve the problem of these field service companies getting parts to do their work. It's traditionally a very difficult problem to solve. A lot of attention's gone into managing the workforce and less so about the parts. And that's the problem that we solve. We place these lockers close to the point of use. So typically that's near engineers' homes, but it could be nearer places where those parts are actually going to be used to do their jobs. If you've got young children and you've ever been woken up in the middle of the night and you've happened to look out your window at 4 o'clock in the morning and you've seen a white van driving down the street, that's probably a BuyBox driver going off to do their next delivery. We do most of our deliveries in night, and there's lots of advantages to that. So we specialize in that final mile to the engineer, but we do everything from warehousing to end-to-end supply chain logistics, including the returns logistics. And our delivery on time performance is unbeatable in the world. We're 99.76% delivery on time performance. That is one of our USPs, and it's only possible through our technology. And our technology platform is an entirely in-house built system. It's been developed over 20 years and includes desktop applications, web applications, mobile applications, you name it. And even the electronic hardware that goes into the lockers, we are responsible for. We also have a standalone technology product which we sell globally. And this is in the US, UK, Europe, Canada, Singapore, Japan, Australia, you name it. We currently have a product and software engineering department of over 40 strong, and we're now in a period of stable growth. I mentioned earlier that I'd been fairly close to the engineering team over my years at BuyBox. I'd previously been in a role where I grew that engineering team from a team of about 30 to a team of about 80. Now, we've had a bit of fluctuation in that growth over the years, but now we're starting to see that growth again. And I think we've all had that experience with the pandemic where there's been certain uncertainty, and hopefully we're in a strong place going forward, just like hopefully the rest of everyone on this call is as well. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, organizing for your business's needs. And I think from the sounds of Mark's presentation, this follows on nicely from what he had to say as well. And I'm calling this achieving optimal cruise speed. And it's become clear why I'm calling that as we go. So you've probably many of you have heard of Conway's Law. So how you organize your business, how you organize your teams affects your product. A well-known example is Conway's Law, as I mentioned, and that's referring to the broader organization, but it's even more relevant for how you organize your product and software development teams. Mark mentioned having product first teams and client first teams, I think was the term you used. Other examples are having project first teams or having teams orientated around rapid response to system issues, that sort of thing. All of them are different ways of organizing depending on what your business's priorities are, what those business needs are. The key point about the concept of how your organization affects your output is communication. It's all driven by communication, inter-team communication, intra-organization or even inter-organization, and even to the point of looking at how your software communicates and interacts, not just with users, but between itself as well. Communication really is the thing that then leads to the effects that perhaps you want to adjust. Behind every product that you work on are people. We haven't got to the point where we've got AI writing products yet, thank goodness. if you imagine, you've probably all got that go-to developer that you go to when you've got a question about something. And when you're thinking about how you can organize your teams, or how your business should organize its software engineering and product functions, it's really thinking people first, and how the interactions between those peoples will then lead to certain behaviors. You want to try and encourage the positive behaviors, the ones that you want as a business, and try to avoid the negative ones. It's obviously not always possible. There's always some unintended outcomes. But that's the idea behind these concepts. And I'll come on to some examples in a moment. So these are typical characteristics that every business will value to a less or greater degree. There's more than these. Obviously, you'll have your own, but these are some examples of ones that I've seen and we certainly value at Buybox. So certain team structures will support or hinder these values. For example, if a team is left responsible for one single application for a long time, that application will probably become very refined. But if your business's goal is primarily to utilize your team to the maximum on the top priority, that's probably not the best way to go. You're going to need to be able to dynamically reform your team around those priorities. So that's where you might end up with project teams or feature teams. So another point on here is that some of these things might conflict with one another as well. And you might have a journey where you go through some of these, and the relative importance of each one will change over time. The best example I can use is a move from responsiveness, which may be, particularly if you've got a small team, a sales-led or client account-led development team who are constantly jumping on the next request from the customer, and then moving gradually away from that into perhaps a utilization model where you're maximizing every individual's time spent on the top priorities for the business. And that's typically, I would call that sort of a finance-led priority. So you can visualize this in a graph. So using these radar graphs, you can see I've got two examples here. One where you're optimized for responsiveness, and this is if the business values responsiveness, innovation as the two primary metrics, without conceding too much on things like cost and quality. Equally, if you optimize for utilization, actually, if you go too far towards utilization, you can then hinder that responsiveness. If you imagine all of your team are occupied 100% of the time on the top priority, what time do they have to be able to respond to individual customer requests, individual product issues, those sorts of things? And those are at the bottom now, I've got the sorts of team characteristics you might see. So if you optimize for responsiveness, you're going to have a highly dynamic cross-functional team. So you're going to be able to spin up those teams quickly around a small customer request and then spin them on to the next thing. And similarly for utilization, there is an element of spinning up dynamic cross-functional teams there, but you'd expect them to be longer lived on sort of projects. And I've given some examples of where maybe Kanban's more useful for responsiveness and Scrum's more useful for utilization. These are just rules of thumb, though. Okay. However, there's a cause and effect. What's the long-term impact of these business behaviors? And the business behaviors I'm talking about are summarized with perhaps some of these speech bubbles that you probably hear from your business, or maybe even in your own heads, or as they come out of your mouth, speaking to the development teams or the rest of your product teams. Everything is top priority. Everyone is busy on top priority stuff all the time. It's something that you might see. Teams organized around projects or sales opportunities. So everyone's project based or request based. there's lots of wins. Everyone's happy about those wins, but always jumping on to the next thing. The time to sort of mop up after or to celebrate is minimal. Difficult to prioritize product hygiene. So these are those small little things that we all wish we could get done. Every time you open up that web application, you see something, you go, oh, I just wish we could get that sorted, but there's no one working on that area to be able to easily pick that up. MVP. I think we've all seen it, where everyone just wants to jump to the MVP as quickly as possible and then move on to the next MVP. Mark had a great example earlier where he was talking about actually progressing from that into sustainable development of those capabilities. But sometimes it doesn't happen, and you end up with just a long series of MVPs. And you probably all heard this from the sales team. We've already sold it to the customer. So what does all this equate to? Debt. And I've got two categories of debt that I use, and that's technical debt and product debt. You've probably all heard of technical debt. You've probably heard of developers complaining about technical debt. And this is mainly a technical or engineering debt associated with things like out-of-date dependencies that they never get time to update, unsupported software libraries, lack of automated tools for just the engineering function itself, leading them to be inefficient. But things like product debt are where we are, as a product function, making decisions about shortcutting certain functions or holding off on delivering certain things, and really keeping that MVP mindset, which is good to do, but too much of it for too long can lead to lots of manual workarounds, gaps in capability, and ultimately issues with usability. So there's before I start jumping up and down about debt, first of all, there's nothing inherently wrong with debt. Think about it. We've built a Western economy built on credit and debt. It's absolutely fine to take on debt, but there's a few things that you need to do. Absolutely need to record it, i.e. in Jira or whatever tool you're using to capture that sort of thing. And this is fine, but you've got to try and repay it soon. If you wait too long, obviously that interest that you're paying on it is growing in time. And by interest, I mean the time you're spent, your development team having to work around that debt or work through that debt. And it does end up impacting your productivity. If you don't repay it, there's interest to be paid. And what I've demonstrated here is the growth in debt over time. If you keep adding more technical debt, more product debt, ends up leading to a situation where the amount of output is reduced, even though you might have a steady headcount in your team. And then when you're trying to add more capacity in the team by adding headcount, you're just continuing to propagate that impact of that debt. So it costs you nearly twice as much to get the same output as without the debt. So trying to avoid getting to that situation is important. So what does I mean by those interest payments? Well, there's the increased cost of change, the lengthy delivery due to technical unknowns, unpredictability, unintended impacts of changes, painful QA processes, and negative impacts on software engineering teams. And that can impact retention, onboarding, and waste from context switching. Those are important. And as a product team, we need to appreciate the challenges that those things pose when we don't pay off that debt. I'm going to have a little bit of an interesting analogy here with something called Coffin Corner. So when I was at Flybe, I worked on a really interesting project. I was a business analyst on a new concept called an electronic flight bag. So it's a first in the world. No one else had done this yet. Pilots historically have to take on these huge bags full of paperwork about the different flight levels that the aircraft can fly out, takeoff speeds, all this other stuff. It weighs a ton, and it's difficult to find stuff. So we decided to put that into an iPad. This was back in, 2013. So it was a fairly innovative concept. One of the things that we did as part of that exercise was provide a tool that would let the pilot input a bunch of parameters about flight conditions, the weight of the aircraft, the air temperature, headwinds, etc. And it would tell them their optimum cruise speed and altitude. This was really important for saving lots and lots of fuel costs, as fuel is one of the biggest costs of an airline. However, while I was doing this, there's all these product sheets about the different parameters at which aircraft can fly. I discovered that there's this, well, I didn't discover it, but I didn't know about it before now. There's something called coffin corner. And this results in the fact that as a aircraft increases in altitude, its stall speed, the point at which if the plane goes any slower, it will stall. And its overspeed level, and that's the point at which the aerodynamics of the aircraft, they basically will no longer be able to fly, and that's due to some complexity around the relative max speed. It's very, very complicated formulas. They both decrease as you climb. So you can get into something called coffin corner, where actually it's very difficult for you to maneuver at that point. Even to the point of, if you try and perform a turn, one side of the aircraft has different aerodynamics to the other, you could end up stalling the aircraft. And this is quite serious. It happened over the Atlantic in Air France flight 447 with a loss of all of the passengers on board. But it's actually fairly relevant to a situation that we could find ourselves in as a product and engineering function in a business. If we get to the point where the various pressures mean that we're unable to slow down, but we can't speed up, either through people just working harder and faster, or through adding capacity in the team, because of that technical debt and because of the cost of doing so, you end up in a situation where you can no longer be responsive, and this can be fatal to a product and development team in particular. So how do we do that in the world of aircraft? They can perform a number of things. Gradually, they want to slowly get out of this coffin corner situation. But if it goes really bad, they have to perform an emergency maneuver. Well, the emergency maneuver in software development and product world is, let's scrap it all and start again. Let's get rid of the technical debt by rebuilding everything from scratch, from all the wonderful things that we've learned and that we now know and we wish we'd done in the first place. However, one of my experiences at Flybe also warns me against this. It's precisely what we tried to do as a team in Flybe. The e-commerce platform at Flybe was old. It was built on some very legacy technology. The software had been built up over years and years and years, and it was very difficult for us to move quickly and do things on it. So there was a decision to try and do something about that and to re-architect the whole software. Where that didn't go so well was also the decision to put a hold on all other business development. And I'm sure you can imagine how that went. It didn't last very long before we were having to somehow incorporate changes into 2 parallel streams of work, and that immediately added extra work, and that compounded and compounded and compounded. The business lost patience, and the project was scrapped. The worst impact of that was then that the development team was so demoralized by that many of them left, losing a lot of knowledge and a lot of capability from the business, and they never really recovered from that as an IT team. So that's the cautionary tale about the emergency maneuver. So how do we do it? Well, we slowly, gradually try to find optimal cruise speed. So, for instance, if any of what I've just said resonates with you, start making some small adjustments. So things like factoring sustained engineering into all your roadmaps. I put a 15% allowance in for all roadmap work, so that we can tackle some technical debt as we go. We call that sustained engineering. We're about to take that up, actually. We're about to take that up to 30% with the blessing of the business, so that we can tackle some larger bits of technical and product debt that we need to. Another thing, try and add gaps between initiatives. Something certainly I've been guilty of in the past is jumping from one initiative straight to the next. So we've just done some fantastic product development, and we've immediately started working on the next piece. Well, what happens is various feedback starts coming in, and we want to try and address some of that feedback. And we need to then incorporate that into the next phase of work. If we have a gap, not only will we be given the ability to do that, to incorporate any of those requests, but it gives slack in the team to go back and mop up any technical debt or product debt that we've decided to take on in the course of the initiative in order for us to get to product delivery and to market sooner. And that's fine to do. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But give them that gap afterwards, and it gives them the ability to mop up. And the other thing, and this is where I'm just going to finish off on this concept, is assigning some technical and product ownership to different products and domains. Now, this is a very big concept. I'm going to touch very briefly on it, and I'm going to give some links and some starters for further reading. We talked about optimizing for responsiveness. We talked about optimization for utilization, and now what I'm saying is optimizing for sustainability. And this is a journey that we're going on. So we're now moving into this idea of optimizing for that sustainability in the team. So we're working with the engineering to form long-lived teams around products or domains or areas known as bounded contexts. And I'll show you some links to some information more about that in a moment. Aligning our work to those teams, so breaking down our initiatives into things that fit into those bounded contexts. In some cases, initiatives may cross multiple teams, so we need to do that work upstream when we're breaking those things down, which means involvement from solution architects, from engineering leads, to help us to do that the right way. This will be slow, and for large, complex systems, it will take a long time. So we've got to be patient with it. And really, this all feeds in from something Mark was saying earlier, which is products over projects. You've probably all heard this concept. But it's not just about thinking about organizing your work and calling your work, breaking your work down into product backlogs. It's about how the team are organized around those as well. That's a crucial point. So what are the results of moving towards this optimization for sustainability? It's improved knowledge and ownership within each product domain team. There's natural slack in the process, and that allows for paying off technical debt as well. What I mean by that is not all teams are going to be working on the top priority thing at the same time. That's never going to happen. So that means that some teams will be working on lower priority things, and gives them that time and space to improve the technical stack behind the product. And gradually over time will increase predictability or responsiveness, depending on the needs of the business. So you might have a team that actually you want to ramp up for responsiveness, and another team that you want to ramp up for predictability. But everything comes with a but. Communication can be a challenge when initiatives cross multiple teams. So organizing around these bounded contexts shouldn't be taken lightly. Feature teams may still be required from time to time. What that means is you might decide to have teams sort of within each individual bounded context working up with one another on an aligned feature, if that feature cuts across multiple bounded contexts. And in complex organizations, systems may not be aligned to those bounded contexts. And this is where there is a big engineering effort to then break those things down. There's also an impact on the business. They need to be educated in the new ways of working and some of the concepts around moving into a product-based way of working. And on the last slide, more reading for you here. So I really recommend Martin Fowler. He's got loads of information with lots of contributors on his website, lots of things around team organization, product concepts, principles around software development. And also you can look through domain-driven design. He's got multiple bits on his website, but there's lots of websites that cover domain-driven design. And there are also some interesting tools and techniques for product owners around event storming and event mapping. And if you're getting really geeky and really interested in this sort of stuff, you can also look at microservices architecture, which feeds into this as well. And that's where you create your architecture within those bounded contexts I was talking about. And also, it's not a plug for them. I don't have any relationship with ThoughtWorks, but I do find their website very interesting and have some useful content on it as well. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much, George. Right, I do have some questions for you here. So, Georgina Wilkinson, she's got a couple of questions. Well, first of all, more of an observation, but number one rule, don't upset your dev team. She also did ask, how do you sell the need to address technical debt to the senior stakeholders? I've always found it, I've always get told to wait until I have to get my big person pants on to push back and secure capacity for it.
It really does come to when it gets to that critical point. So an explanation of what you can get out of it is always dangerous, because it's not a done deal that by addressing these things, you're going to see a massive improvement in the capacity in the team. And it's going to take a long time. It's going to be gradual. It's more about what's the cost of not doing it. What are the risks of not doing it? And I'd say that, unfortunately, that's sometimes how you have to relay issues, is in that negative sense. If the team is really struggling and suffering, you could see high attrition rates in the team, loss of knowledge, and ultimately it could lead to higher costs to the business from recruitment. Sorry, Oscar. And you want to ultimately avoid too much disruption to your product roadmap. I have to make adjustments to the product roadmap due to interruptions in capacity in the team due to resourcing. That's just a reality. So by addressing these things and building ecosystems for the development team that they enjoy working in will help all those negative impacts and risks that I just mentioned.
Liam Flood says, we talk a lot about technical capital versus technical debt. I like the idea of being okay with technical debt if it's worth paying the interest on it.
Absolutely. It's no different to if you want to put an extension on your house and you want to enjoy it sooner rather than later. Actually, it's probably a bad analogy because you don't make any money from that extension unless you're renting it out. But if you can get to market with something quickly by taking on technical debt or product debt, absolutely do it. It's the bit at the end that you've also got to do. You can't just jump straight onto the next stuff, because you'll be leaving all sorts of problems for the future you and future developers and the business as a whole. But I think Mark's point earlier about going from MVP to sustainable development, it shouldn't be a given that you go from MVP to sustainable development. It might be that MVP doesn't work, you fail fast and you move on. But there might be some cleanup the development team needs to do as well, and that chaff that's left around can eventually sort of clog up the machinery.
A question from Harry. How do you sell the bounded context to the engineering teams and the CTO? What was their initial response?
Well, funnily enough, this didn't actually come from myself. It came from the engineering team. So I worked with the engineering team to convince our CTO, who we then in turn convinced the board. And it really was about demonstrating those risks and the issues that we face, the ability to scale. We want to grow as a business, but every time we add people in, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and you then can't utilize things like team augmentation by using nearshoring or offshoring to bring extra capacity into your team, because it just takes months to get people up to speed, and it's expensive for your team and for them. So those were the main reasons for it. I think if there's anything else you can do, lots of pictures. They always help.
Liam Flood, going back to the previous question you had, he said, thanks for the response here. Getting technical debt resolved is about the integrity of what we're doing. And it says a lot about the values of the organisation.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
Georgina Wilkinson, we can tell you worked as an engineer, one of the few product managers blowing the trumpet for technical debt. The others are just calling for features on top of features.
Well, the point to make is you will, to use my coffin corner analogy, you will carry on climbing up that flight level until you get to the point where you can't, and it costs more and more and more for every small increment. And it's recognizing where you are on that graph. Because once you get into that coffin corner, you really are stuck as a product manager. It's not just about the engineering function suffering. You are suffering as a business and as a product manager that you can't deliver the things that are going to add value.
I guess jumping on Georgina's point a little bit, George, do you think there's value in growing a product or product management team with people with different types of backgrounds that bring someone that brings an engineering perspective, someone that brings a UX perspective, someone that brings, I guess, a sales perspective, possibly? Absolutely,
without question. So quite similar to what Mark was talking about, I rely on committees and steering groups to work within our business, because we're largely a service-driven business, and the technology is an enabler to that. We do also have pure technology software products, and that's where we can do some pure product management, which is great. But we bring those people from account management, from customer onboarding, from our operations team, so the people that are actually doing the logistics, into these teams when we're building new capabilities. Literally, we're doing classic reviews and demos with them. They can get their hands on the stuff, the scanners or the lockers, and try stuff and try and break it. Getting that input is crucial. What I would say though is that the disciplines of software engineering, of product management, of business analysis, those are all disciplines that I believe that you can apply anywhere, no matter what your background. So whether you've come from logistics business or from airline, it doesn't matter, police force. So it's going from those principal concepts and bringing that into the team. When I'm recruiting product owners and business analysts into my team, I'm looking for people that are smart, first and foremost, that can think about these problems from first principles, pick up the concepts that are available. You know, we've got loads of resources online and stuff that we can read, but understanding how you can apply them in the right and appropriate manner for the business that you're working in and within that context. It isn't one size fits all. All the things I was just talking about, there won't be a one size fits all for those that maps perfectly onto your business. it's just hopefully a place where you can start looking and reading about those concepts.
Yeah. There's no further questions from people? Well, there we go. Harry, thanks George for the marketing Fowler team org links. I'm about to embark on a large restructure with an IT team, so super useful.
Great stuff. Let me know if you want to have a chat about that. I've done it myself, so I'm happy to help.
I think a question for you there, I plucked out while you were talking there. What are the kind of the team challenges, whether it be with your engineers or other people, from moving from a phase of responsiveness into either sort of sustainable or utilization led? I think with engineers, I'd imagine that if there's less innovation and R&D happening, they're not as happy with that.
So it all depends. Usually that means that you've now built a fairly stable product. You've got a stable set of customers and a stable revenue. That doesn't just happen for free. Everything you built to get there now needs to be oiled, kept moving forward, incremental additions to all that stuff. That takes time, and quite rightly, that's where the energy needs to be applied. The whole so Buybox is probably no different to any company that's gone from being a startup to an SME to now a large business. The days of a potential customer calling up and saying, "Do you have this thing?" and us saying, "Absolutely," and then spending 2 weeks coding manically to build it, those are gone. And quite rightly, we should be focused on maintaining and retaining our revenue and sustainably growing our customer base on the thing that we are best at. And Mark was making that point as well about best of breed. Let's not try and run after everything. Let's focus on the things that we are the best at and that we know that we can deliver. And it's that transition in mindset from the sales and account managers in particular, where we just have to say no to some stuff. And I always think that's the first lesson for any product manager is learning to say no.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of a lot of organisations, isn't it? It's prepared to sort of turn business away that isn't right for the capability you've got in front of you. So a question from Elisa Evans. How do you say no to sales if they've already sold it?
A slap wrist and don't do it again, and then knuckle down together to make it happen. I mean, as a business, you've got to get behind that, and it all depends on your leadership team. Is your leadership team sales focused and revenue focused, or have you got someone who's perhaps more an accountant, sort of finance minded, and thinking about what's the margins on these things, what's the impact on winning this customer? And I've seen times where, although someone in the sales team says that they've closed a deal, we've turned around and said this isn't going to happen because it's not the right thing for Buybox right now, or the right thing for whatever organization that you're in. That has to come from the top, though. And it is about that leadership, and I think, truth be told, we're very rarely in a position where we can make that call.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it probably depends on what the sort of senior leadership of the business looks like. If their background's in sales, they've seen a big sort of headline sale coming in, are they going to back the tech guys? And ultimately, yeah, it'd be I imagine that's a challenge for a hell of a lot of business, actually. So yeah. Hope that answers your question, Melissa. What tips do you have for, I guess, avoiding technical debt before you've even begun, or kind of keeping on top of it? How would you, going back to the beginning of Buybox, knowing what you know now, what would you do?
I'll be honest with you, I would do very little differently. Up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, businesses have to grow through rapid jumping on rapid opportunities, taking what they can when they can. So there's nothing wrong with taking on debt as you go. It's about paying it off sooner, though, rather than letting it continue. The cost over time grows the longer you leave it. And I hate to think that what some organizations pay in their technical debt over the course of years or decades, but it will be very significant numbers. So trying to tackle it sooner. Again, nothing wrong with taking it on. It's about trying to tackle it sooner. That's the key point. And also recognizing that there is, whenever you add something into your system, or you add a customer or a capability or a service into your ecosystem, into your business, there is something that then has to increase in order to maintain and sustain that. So having a proportional level of growth in your engineering and product functions to support those new capabilities is also important as well, because it doesn't just sit there doing nothing. Software entropies, if you just leave it, it needs to be updated, it needs to be maintained. Everything that you add has a maintenance cost to it going forwards.
Do you have to sort of set some values at the get-go, around people that are coming into the business, whatever their role may well be around there? Do you have to have shared common values around technical debt?
Oh, without question. And I guess I can't remember who mentioned it earlier. It might have been Georgina. Oh no, sorry, it was Liam. It was about the resolving technical debt really does demonstrate the integrity of the business. And it's not just technical debt. We've talked about technical debt a lot. It's product debt as well. So where we've made shortcuts, classic examples is if you've added a new feature, but you don't. There's a bulk upload facility or an edit facility that you haven't added. And you've just let your IT or your application support team pick up the day-to-day dealing of those missing functions through things like SQL scripts and various other things. That ends up costing you as a business as well, and you're just offloading the pain to another part of the business, and that isn't sustainable either. So it's having that integrity to not just keep pushing the pain around and it's solving it at source, because I think there are certain organizations that might encourage a sort of siloed approach where it goes, well, it's not impacting my budget, it's not impacting my team, so forget it. No, it's about looking at as a business as a whole and what you can do to minimize the pain elsewhere and maximize the benefits.
Brilliant. I think from me, I think I'm out of questions. Has anyone else got any last ones that you want to chuck in? There we go. Georgina Wilkinson. Automation test coverage is always less technical debt, which is madness because the cost is so easily quantifiable and large. Any tips for convincing chief product owners of importance of automation over the high priority must-have features that they're asking for?
I went through exactly this. Demonstrate it with something small. Look at tools like BDD, behavior-driven development. There is lots of great little tools that allow you to express automated tests in a common business language, and then for you to write those tests out first, and that doubles as your use cases, your user story documentation, your acceptance criteria, and goes directly into the code. And then that code then literally runs the tests based on what you write in those acceptance tests. Try that with a new project where you're doing that from the start. So say you've got a new feature set that you can draw a nice dotted line around, and we're going to do this. We're going to go full TDD or BDD, and we're going to have acceptance tests covering all the different acceptance criteria and scenarios. Do that through the development from the start. If the developers aren't experienced, I do really recommend seeing if they can either get some training in that or bring someone in that does know about those tools. But once they've got them in place, it does not slow down development. It speeds it up. Going back and adding acceptance criteria and coverage to your previous features, yeah, that's painful and it's going to take a long time. But if you can do it and demonstrate it for something from the start, ideally something that you can release independently, then you can demonstrate its value, and you need less QA time. You can make a change, press the button, see it go through the development environments, development cycles, and just go out. And I'm sure they will very quickly want a lot more of that.
Good answer. Okay. Well, look, I think George, Mark, Owen, and that's the dream. Thank you.
I can tell you, 5-6 years ago, we didn't have any of that at Buy Box. Now, most of our applications have exactly that coverage, and it really wasn't. It's not just a dream; it is perfectly possible. And our release cycles, our deployment cycles are incredible now. We're doing several releases a week, and it's fantastic. So it's well worth the journey.
Okay. Well, look, I think George and Mark kind of both bared their souls tonight and shared some, I guess, some stories of things going well. I guess things not going so well. The floor's open to anyone that wants to chip in with some stories of their own as part of our confessional feature. If no one wants to step up, then it's a future feature we'd like to sort of have. Bringing people to the altar of confession and sharing where they might have avoided a coughing corner and done their sort of handbrake manoeuvres to sort of save the situation or anything like that. But if no one's brave enough to step up tonight, then hopefully someone will in the next few sessions that we do. So the floor's open to anyone. No takers. Well, look, I appreciate everyone that showed up tonight. I think hopefully you've enjoyed the topics of discussion. This certainly won't be the first one that we do. We're looking to sort of roll this out and keep this going. The longer term aim is that we'll make this an in-person event, and I'm hoping that as the COVID restrictions die off, that we'll end up rolling this out to our Manchester, London and the Midlands, which will be myself, Jasmine and Ram leading that. And if anyone wants to sort of speak in the future and volunteer themselves or would like some topics to be discussed in the future, then please feed it back to me and we'll collate ideas, we'll have discussions and look to get something set up in future. But I'd like to thank everyone that has come tonight. Thank you very much to George and to Mark for speaking and being brave enough to be our inaugural speakers. Also a big thank you from me to my colleague Will, who as our marketing manager has spent a lot of time with me to help organise this and do graphics and everything. And to everyone at Oscar that's rallied around me today. Not gonna lie, been a bag of nerves getting set up doing this today. So thank you to everyone that's given me a little pat on the back for this tonight. I hope those that have come along have enjoyed it and will spread the word to their product friends. But thank you very much to everyone. We'll leave this here for tonight and look forward to hearing from you and your feedback.
Thank you, Colin. Cheers. Bye.